Hey scrapbook friends, it's Nicole from Nicole's Scrapbooks, and today I'm going to share with you a layout that is still in progress. As you can see, this layout doesn't have a title yet, it doesn't have any journaling, but I created this at Crop this past week and I loved it so much, and so I shared it on my Facebook page and I shared it in the Creative Memories Advisor Facebook group, and I got such positive feedback and so many people saying, oh my goodness, I want to recreate this layout, that I decided that I better do a video right now while I still had some of my pieces that I used to put the layout together and still remembered some of the tips and tricks. So if you would like to recreate this layout, you're going to need a few specific supplies. Mostly you're going to need some paper to use for the actual ukulele. And I'm using paper that is from a Creative Memories Advisor exclusive pack called Shiplap. So if you have a CM Advisor or you are a CM Advisor, this is the second quarter 2021 Advisor Gift paper pack. So if you can ask your advisor about it. But I love this paper because it has this wood that to me looked very much like the wood of a ukulele. My husband actually builds ukuleles. We probably have about 10 of them, not all made by him. And I just thought that this was going to be perfect. And on the back of it is this darker wood, which works really well for the neck. So you're going to need 2 pieces of wood grain paper. You're going to need one to be as the body and one to be for the neck. Now, some of these papers here in Shiplap really look like they, are wood planking or shiplap. You would not want this probably for ukulele because it has the different boards stuck together. Try to find something that looks just like a piece of wood instead of lots of little pieces of wood glued together. So you're also going to need 2 pieces of paper to be your background. Now I used this paper from Natural Disposition, which was a CM collection that came out last December, but this is the only piece that I have of this paper, and so I thought that I would try for my demo, the one I'm going to show you, I'm going to use this paper that is from the Spring Cottage Tone on Tone. And now that I kind of see it, I'm not sure it's awfully bright blue and stripy, but we're going to try it for just to make this sample. But this is the one that's going in my actual album, is the one with Natural Disposition. All right, then you're gonna need some scraps of paper. You're gonna need some gray or silver paper for the knobs. I chose to use gray. I thought about using the platinum shimmer, but I didn't want this to be the focal point of my page. I thought if it was too shimmery, your eye would be drawn there. You're gonna want a piece of white or beige paper to make the strings. This is also from Shiplap, and this is what I used. You're not going to need the whole piece of it. You're just going to need about an inch, maybe a little bit more. You want a bigger piece because we're going to be cutting 1/8 inch strips, and so you need something for the trimmer to grab onto. But some kind of white or beige paper for the strings, and then a piece of brown paper to be, I actually don't know what the name of this little hole in the ukulele is called. My husband would know. Anyway, the hole that's cut out of the ukulele, we're going to use for that. All right, and then to make it easier for you, I have created a template, which I will upload a couple of places. I'll definitely put it in the CM Advisors group for those who are advisors. I will put it on my Nicole's Scrapbook Friends Facebook group, and I will try to put it on my NicoleScrapbooks.com website, but it'll probably have to be a JPEG there instead of a PDF. If somebody has an idea of like a free hosting site, I will look into that. I will put the link in the comments somewhere that you can download this template. And so we're going to cut this out and use this to create the ukulele. Then of course you're going to need scissors, your trimmer. You're going to want the custom cutting system largest circle with the blue blade, some adhesive, both the regular and the repositionable, unless you're one of those that only ever uses repositionable, and then you'll probably be all right. Some foam squares if you want them, and a pencil. All right, so let's get started, and we are going to pretend that I am you, and I have just printed out these 2 pieces from the template. So you're going to want to cut these out, and it's a little, I wasn't quite sure how to do it because when the template that I made, I used on a piece of the scrap cardstock, you know, that I talk about all the time. And because I knew I was going to cut it out of 12 by 12 paper, I traced it on here, you know, sketched it out. But in order for me to do something that is printable, I had to make it fit on an 8.5 by 11. So I did this for you guys because I love you. But what you're going to want to do is cut this out along this dark outside edge. I'm not going to cut out the whole thing because I don't want to make you guys watch that whole thing. But we're going to pretend that I'm going to cut this whole ukulele pattern out all the way around this outside edge. Don't pay any attention to these inside lines. They are not cutting lines. Only this outside edge is what you're going to want to cut. Okay, so let's pretend I've cut this whole thing out. And I left these little points for a purpose, but you're going to actually cut those off. So then we're going to cut out the next piece. And same thing, we're going to cut around this darker outside line. And it's okay if you don't really cut straight because this is going to be your pattern. You can always smooth it out as you get going. But this will kind of give you what you need to get started. And actually right here, if you wanted to, you could just kind of keep going around the curve just in case your paper doesn't exactly line up the way mine does. So you've cut these two pieces out. You're going to want to cut out this piece for the head. I think it's called the head of the ukulele that goes on top of the neck. This one you don't have to cut out. If you do not have the custom cutting system, I put this on here so you can trace this and cut this out. But if you have the custom cutting system, that's going to be a lot easier. So we're going to cut out this pattern. You're going to cut it out all the way. Remember, I'm just pretending for you. And then you're going to want to overlap these. And it doesn't really matter which way you do it. Just put a little tape on this little section where it says overlap to create the pattern. And then line up these points. So you're lining the line up with the dotted line. You're lining up the points. And that's just going to make sure that your piece is straight. And then you can just go ahead and cut off these little points. Okay. And so then what you're going to be left with is a piece that looks like this. All right. So this is going to be your pattern. And I guess I better cut this one out real quick too, because I need this for the other piece. So one of the things I have written on here, as you see, is I have a thing that says grain line. If you look at a real ukulele, and I imagine a guitar, the wood grain is going to be straight. And in fact, with ukuleles, they use, I think they call it bookend, where they take one piece of wood and slice it really thinly and then butt it up together and then cut the piece out of that. So we really want to have this grain line so that we have our paper cut straight. So you would not want to put this on here and cut it like this with the grain lines going this way, right? You want to line this up with the grain lines, and this is a pretty straight grain paper. And so you're going to want to cut it, yeah, it takes up the whole page right here pretty much. So you're going to want to cut as close to the straight on the grain line as you can. Now, I always like to cut on the back. I'm going to go ahead and take a little bit of repositionable adhesive, and I'm going to line this up. I'm going to use my grid on my tabletop just to kind of make sure that this is straight. Would have been easier if I had maybe traced the line on the other side. So now that I've stuck it on, I can just take my scissors and cut around, or you can draw with a pencil and cut it. But actually, I think I'm just going to do it like this, and we're going to cut around just following this template. Now you are going to want to save this extra piece because you're going to need that for the neck. So I'm going to cut this out, and you see it's got a couple little straight edges. That is just kind of for positioning purposes on your page. But if you want to, you can just ignore that and then trim it after you adhere it on your page. So that gives you a little bit of wiggle room as far as positioning. All right. So here's my pattern. I'm going to cut this out right here. Actually, I'm going to go like this because I want this to look like it's curving. I tried to do just a whole solid pattern. It would not fit on an 8.5 by 11 sheet. I just couldn't make it work. So, and then we're going to do the same thing here with our little end piece. My husband will probably watch this later and he'll be telling me what the name of it is. So sorry, I can't remember what it is. It might be called the head. I don't know. And you can, of course, change up how you do this. Some ukulele and guitar heads look different. If you're doing a guitar, you might want this to be a little bit longer because a guitar has 6 strings. A ukulele generally has 8. So, all right, here's the pieces that we're going to cut out using the pattern, since I'm going to cut out the other with the custom cutting system. All right. Actually, I think I am going to just go ahead and cut this end piece off so I know how to position it. Sorry. When I did it for myself, I just kind of winged it as I was scrapbooking on my page. But I'm going to cut this straight edge right here. And then I'm going to I'll take the pattern off. And then I'm going to take those 2 pieces of blue paper. If I can remember where I put them. All right, so here's my 2 pieces of blue paper that I'm going to use as my background. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put this one on, and I cut this edge off so that I will know right where it's going to go. And right here you can see there it kind of doesn't curve right, so that's where I'm going to know how to attach it on here. And actually, as I look at it, I didn't cut very straight around the edge, so I'm just going to smooth it out just a little bit so it looks like one continuous piece. And I like to use permanent adhesive for things that I don't need to move around. I just feel like I'm going to put all this work into it and I want it to stay forever. So line this up with the bottom, this up with the top, this edge off right here. So I've taken this, it's just going off the edge, and you could use your trimmer, but I'm just going to line my scissors up along the edge of the paper and trim this. So this is going to be the main body of my ukulele right here. All right, so now I'm going to need, before I can stick this down, I'm going to need to create the neck. So for that, I need my other piece of the darker wood and my trimmer. And the neck piece on this is going to be 2 inches wide. So, and you're going to need 2 pieces just to give you the ability to get things the way you want them. So 2 pieces of the darker wood. And again, I'm going with the grain. I maybe could go against the grain because then it would kind of give me the fret lines, but I didn't think of that. So 2 pieces of the darker that are 2 inches wide. So I should write that down for you. 2-inch wide neck. All right. You're going to need another piece of this in a minute, but I think we might have extra from this. We might not have to cut another piece. And then you're going to want your circle. That's going to be the sound hole. And you do not need to use a whole piece of brown paper for this. I just happen to have a whole piece handy. So we're using the big circle, the inside with the blue blade to cut our little sound hole. And I did kind of put a template on here if you need a little help positioning it. But you're just going to want to do kind of what looks right to you. So let's see, I have it right here, about right there. And then we're going to do the neck. And then you're going to want to bring your other piece to figure out where the neck is going to go. Now here's a part where I I have a little, like a pet peeve. I don't know if it's right to call it a pet peeve, but if you notice when you use Creative Memories album pages, when you put them together, the little jeeping edge leaves a gap. So if you put your pages, if you create your layout like this so that it lines up exactly on here, then when you put it on your pages, it's just going to look slightly off. It's not going to line up. Whereas here, because I've left a little gap, I feel like it visually makes that look a lot straighter. So that's just a little pet peeve of mine when I'm doing across a double page layout. And so what I like to do is just take a piece of paper, scrap paper, and cut a 3/4 inch piece, and that's going to be my spacer. So that as I'm positioning this, and actually now that I've cut this all stuck on here, I think I want this to go down a little bit. So maybe don't stick it down until you have figured out this spacing. I think I'm going to angle it down just a little bit, because that way I can have my my neck can go out a little bit longer. All right, so I'm putting this 3/4 inch piece in between just to line it up. And then I'm going to put my little sound hole. I'm going to put my neck piece. And again, I'm trying to line up with that grain to keep it really straight. So in the template that I gave you, I drew the grain line. And I drew kind of where the neck piece is going to go, because you want it to just look visually pleasing. So if I wanted it to be right here, then this would be long enough, but I don't think that's long enough for me. I think I want to put this kind of farther out to the edge. And so I want to have a little bit extra. So this one I am going to use the Repo, and because that way I can move it around a little bit. And I'm going to put this here, even though this is going to go on top. I'm going to use this as a positioner. And then I'm going to take this and I'm going to attach it to the top of the other piece of the neck board. I'll use it on here. Try to make it as straight as I can so it just lines up just right. This, the little head piece is just a smidge wider than the neck. And so, you know, just make sure you got it lined up on there. And then I'm going to take this piece. Oops. So I've got my ukulele, and I'm just going to line this up. Oh, I really could almost do just one piece of that wood, but I think I might actually trim a little bit off the edge of this and put a border. So I think I'm going to go right about here. I'll stick that down. And then of course, once again, you're going to need to trim off the excess. And actually with this one, I might want to just use my trimmer. Whoops. So line this up with your cutting surface on the trimmer and just even out that edge and even out the other edge. And then I'm going to do the same. Now I'm committed because I've trimmed that edge. I'll do the same thing right here. Just trim this edge off. All right, and now, oops, I didn't quite get that all the way off. And now I would go back with my permanent adhesive and just put a few splashes of permanent adhesive. The Repo does get progressively more tacky over time. I don't think like a lot of this is going to fall off, but when it's a big piece like this, I prefer to use the permanent adhesive just for my own peace of mind. And then I'm going to take this and do the little hole. And you just kind of center that on the edge of the neck, kind of in between this little skinny section. All right, and you see this doesn't line up, but that's okay because it'll line up when you've got your jeeping. And even if you don't, you know, use Creative Memories albums, Even every album has a little space in the middle. Very few albums do the pages line up. So if your page lines up perfectly, then you can ignore this part. But if you're using a Creative Memory album with Jeeping, I think that this really makes it visually look nicer to have the angles be right. Okay, so next we're going to need the little bridge, which the string's attached to at this end. And for that, the piece needs to be 3/4 of an inch wide by 2 3/4 inches long. So 3/4 of an inch by 2 3/4. Okay, so that's the piece I'm cutting, and this is for what's called the bridge. And this one, I don't think it matters what direction your wood grain goes. I hope it doesn't, because then I would have to cut a new piece, and I would really like to use this little scrap. So here's going to be my bridge. And then the fun begins, and we're going to start cutting our strings. Okay, so I'm going to take this piece from the shiplap, and I'm going to, I think I'm going to do this side. I don't want this knot. I want this piece that's relatively clean. And then we're just going to cut 8 1/8 of an inch strips. So if you look at your trimmer, the line with the number on it, closest to your logo, that's the cutting line. The second line is going to be the 1/8 of an inch mark. And actually, now that I look at this, I'm going to flip over my mat because it's in bad shape. Okay, obviously this was a used mat before. So here's my backup mat. We're going to put this on here now. So brand spanking new mat. If your trimmer ever stops cutting cleanly, that's how you know it's time to replace your mat. It's about 500 cuts, but I don't expect anybody to count how many cuts they're making. So you can see I'm lining up my paper with the second dotted line right there. All right. The first line is where I'm going to cut. And then because we're cutting a really skinny paper, hold tight to this. Don't let it scoot around, because you want to have a nice, even 1/8 of an inch strip, and we need 8 of these. So really you only need, a 1/2 an inch of, an inch of paper, but you want to be able to hold on to it. So a little bit bigger piece is kind of nice. 4. And sometimes if I don't hold it right, or it scoots a little bit, I don't get the quite straight cut that I want. And so I may cut like a 9th piece just in case I have one that's not quite as straight as I would like. That one looks a little skinnier than the others too. And that one looks a little bit wider. So this is a hard width to cut. And it's probably wider than a real ukulele string would be. So, you could probably use like string or baker's twine or something if you wanted to. I don't use a lot of that in my album, so I didn't think about that. Okay, I'm gonna take now, I forgot to glue my bridge down. I'm gonna take this other little piece of leftover neck just so that I can get this lined up. Sorry, a little bit of adhesive on here. I'm gonna line this up, and you wanna go about 1 inch, maybe a little bit longer. So I'm lining these sides up just so that I know that my line is straight. I could also use my zero centering ruler. Actually, let me show you with that. Just line this up with the top so that I can get this about 1 inch. I'm upside down, but about 1 inch. And this is a 2 3/4 inch wide. So I'm just gonna kind of do it at 2 3/8. Just so I'm straight. All right, so there's my bridge now attached to this. And now we're gonna put the strings on. And a tip that I learned, I think it was from the uber talented Sachio Omitsu, who, if you have seen any of her stuff, she's done stuff on the CM blog. She's just incredibly gifted, but we're going to use the repositional tape for this. Now, I have a page divider from one of the Power Layouts boxes, and I love to use this for my repositionable tape because nothing sticks to it. And I'm going to take all of these and I'm going to turn them over. Okay, that one's too thick, I think. Turn them over. I'm not going to maybe do all of them at once. Maybe I will. We'll see. We'll do all of them. And this way I can put the adhesive on and be as frugal as possible. These guys do not want to lie flat. I'm so sorry. So I think we're just going to do half at a time. This one is definitely too thick, so I'm going to just let that little guy go off and not be a part of our project. And I'm just going to position these together as best I can. Doesn't have to be exact. Actually, I'll just do 4 at a time. And then we're going to take our repositionable adhesive and just kind of go over. Now this one, you're going to use a ton of adhesive. Just how it is. Because you want this to be as sticky as you can. You could do this with a glue pen or something like that. If you can draw a straight line, then that might be the ideal choice, is to use the glue pen. But for me, I like to do the I like to use the repositionable adhesive. All right. So now I'm going to bring my ruler again. Okay, here's the 0 centering ruler. So if you've seen this, it's got the 0 in the middle. On here, you'll notice that one side has the measurements. And so there is not a line that goes across. So I'm going to use this side because I want this line, this 1/4 inch line. And I'm going to line up my ruler so that, let's see, I need a white piece of paper to show you. So that this 1/4 inch line is going to be right on top of the neck. So I'm going to put the 1/4 inch line right on there, make sure that it is straight. And then I'm going to take one strip that I've stuck together over here. And I'm going to position this with the end piece halfway on the bridge and line this right up against, whoops. I swear this was easier, you guys, when I wasn't trying to do it on a video for you. Right up against the edge of my ruler. All right, so that way I know it's nice and straight. And then I'm going to do the same thing on the other side and use that same 1/4 inch line. You notice I didn't put adhesive all the way to the end because I knew I was going to have some of it cut off the other side. So now I'm going to do the same thing, and I just eyeballed it. It might have been a good idea for me to measure, but I have trouble measuring. I did a lot of measuring just so I could share with you. All right, oops. All right, so there's my next little string. And then I did the 1/2 inch line, and I put the 1/2 inch on the outside of the first string. So it's not exactly like a 1/2 inch measurement. And, you know, somebody who's better at math than I am might have a better way of getting these kind of even or evenly spaced. Once you get this first little end piece down, come on, then the rest is slightly easier because you can just keep your ruler as the guide and line it up. So that piece actually is a little bit wider than I would like, but oops. Okay, this is definitely why you want the repositionable, so that you can it just needs to look straight. And so this last one, I'm really lazy. I'm just going to kind of eyeball where I think the center is. And we're just going to line it up. That looks straight to you guys. All right, so here's my strings on this side, and then we'll just snip these off. All right, and then we're going to do the exact same thing on the other side. And unfortunately, I do not know how to speed up video. So I know that there are people who can speed up the video and just zip through some of this, and I don't know how. So you'll just have to bear with me as I put more adhesive. That's the one I didn't want on these strings. If you don't have the repositionable adhesive, you might want to just draw a line with a pencil to do your strings, and then use some liquid glue, like the glue pen or something like that, to adhere these down. And this side was a little bit longer, so I'm going to do a little bit more. Actually, I think I'm going to do the whole thing, because this part's a little tricky, because we've got to put the little pin things. Again, don't know what they're called. Sorry, husband. I've failed you. Okay, so now I'm going to put my little spacer back in. And put the rest of my strings. And I'm still going to want the ruler to line up with this edge. Okay, now I'm seeing I'm not as straight as I thought I was. Okay. And I'm going to start down here. I'm going to go right over this spacer, and I'm going to go all the way up to the top. I'm not going to press it down. Come on. Yeah, see, this isn't quite lining up straight. Okay, maybe I'm going to ignore my little pieces. I'm going to take this one, and this is a little easier because I'm mostly just, actually, I'm just going to skip that. Okay, this is really how I work, you guys. I don't really do as much measuring as I probably should. Okay, so then we're going to just do this next one. I'm not pressing it down a lot at the end, because we're going to want to move that. And then my last two strings. All right, this one actually I'm going to need a little bit longer, I think, so I'm going to have to go. Maybe I shouldn't have trimmed the edges yet. That might have been a better plan. See, I thought if I did it right now, I would still remember how I had done it, and in fact, I've already forgotten. All right, so this one's a little thick too. All right, I don't love that, but okay. So we're done with this for a minute. Now we're going to need to make the little pegs that go up here on the top. And I didn't have a circle punch or a hole punch that made that size circle. So I was asking the ladies at my crop, and somebody said, you should trace around the tip of a pen. So that's what I did. I took one of our Creative Memories dual tip pens, and I just traced around it. And I'm going to cut 4 of these. If you're doing a guitar, you'd want 6. I suppose if you're doing an 8-string ukulele, you'd want 8, but really it's enough work to do the 4 strings, guys. Just trust me. And it doesn't have to be pretty, because this is the back. I'm not gonna worry too much about this. All right, so here's my little circles. I'll put the lid back on my pen, and then I'm just going to cut these guys out. If you have a punch that can punch this, it's smaller than a 1/2 inch, but it's bigger than a 1/4 inch. Maybe it's a 3/8 of an inch. You could absolutely do that. If you have a stencil that has a little circle, that would be nice too. This is just what I came up with on the fly. So thanks to my friend Judy for suggesting that I use a pen lid. All right, I'm not doing as careful a job cutting these out because I see the timer ticking away on this YouTube video, and you know I don't like to take up your whole life with these things, but I hope you will agree that this particular project is very fun. Okay, so here's my 4 little pegs, and then I'm going to position them just on my little ukulele head up here. I'm going to put them kind of right here, and then these next 2 I'm going to go a little bit farther to the outside. And so I'm going to use a foam square because I like the way that lifts it up, and I'm going to put the first ones right on the string, right there. Right here, and just kind of try to line them up so that they're pretty straight. And then the next 2 are going to be a little bit farther out, but it's okay. We're going to trim this off, this little tail off, right underneath next to the foam square. And then we're going to take this, and what I did here is I just kind of pinched it with my finger and moved it over to the side. So right about here, I'm just going to lift this up. I'm just going to move it. And it makes a little bit of a crease right there. But it works okay. All right, so now a couple more foam squares. And then I've got my little pegs for the string, tuning the strings. And I'll trim that off. Oops. All right, and that is pretty much it for making this ukulele. Oh, I got to trim this edges off. Like I say, you could use real string if you're someone that uses string in your scrapbooks. But if you're not, if you're like me and you just want to use what you have and you have the paper, here's your finished ukulele project. Again, it's got that space because when you're going to put it on a Creative Memories album page, you want it to still look lined up even when you got that jeeping in the middle. And I think it looks really great. I did have people, when I posted my semi-finished product, tell me I should move the pictures so that you could see more of the ukulele, which, you know, you could, but I love these pictures. And in fact, I have a peekaboo pocket that's going to go on here because I have even more pictures that I want to put than I could fit. Remember that the layout is supposed to support your pictures. Don't feel like you have to then show off this piece of art that you've created with paper. Feel free to cover them up a little bit. I mean, I liked leaving it, but I think you can tell easily by looking at this what this is. I would not need to just leave it blank like this. Although I got to say, I may frame this and hang it up in my husband's wood shop where he builds ukuleles. So I think that's all that I have for you. Like I say, I will post in the comments where you can get the downloadable PDF that has the template. I'll also put the list of ingredients that you need to put this together. If you have any questions, please ask me in the comments here or on Facebook, and I will do my best to answer those for you. Thank you so much for watching, and happy scrapbooking.